So, you've finished writing a manuscript. Congratulations! Like, hello, that's a pretty big deal. Now's the time where you can actually pat yourself on the back. Well done. Okay, but now what? What do you do? How do you start editing? Does it need editing? I have 10 steps of revising a first draft that I would like to share with you. Now, these 10 steps take time and they do take patience. But if you execute these 10 steps correctly, your manuscript will be so much better than before you actually did the self-edit. This is kind of what to do before you even get into editing, grammar, and spelling errors and all those little things. Number 1 is wait it out. This is really difficult to do. I know this is a hard one. But try wait a month before you jump into the editing process. A month? A whole month? Yes, a whole month. Because you need to give yourself time to actually forget your book a little. You need to forget about the characters. You need to forget about the writing. So give yourself some time to forget about the book before you actually jump into the editing. During that month, you can write another book. You can write poetry. You can read a lot. So you can learn. Spend the month not working on that book. Now, after you've waited out a month, you get to step 2, which is reread your novel. Okay, now you're going to want to burn it. Maybe toss it out a window, maybe stomp on it, maybe tear it into little shreds. Okay, cut yourself some slack. This is your first draft. It is allowed to be messy. It is allowed to be terrible. It's supposed to be. So really, let it be. Pretend for a second that you are not yourself and you are actually your best friend reading your first draft. Would you be as horrible to yourself as your best friend as you are as yourself? Does that make any sense? I hope it does. Read your first draft with open eyes, read it with optimism, and be kind to yourself. Don't make any notes, just read. Read it. Once you've read it once, you can read it a second time. Now is the time where you make any notes. You take notes of any plot holes. You take note of anything that irritates you. Pacing problems, inconsistency, major mistakes, unanswered questions. Really anything that you can think of, you make a note of it right now. And just remember that the first draft is basically you telling yourself the story. It is a rough version. This brings me to point number 3. Now that you've identified plot holes during your second reread, you can go back and fix them. Don't rush through this step though. It can take time. It can take a lot of time. Some changes will be quick and others will be tedious and feel like they take forever. You'll find the process so rewarding. So don't skip this step. Number 4 is pacing. Focus on consistent pacing throughout your book. Do some parts read too slow? Do some parts read too fast? This is the time where you can fix the pacing issues. Number 5, kill your darlings, darling. This is a tough task to manage because you have worked so hard on this first draft. The thought of having to kill off anything and the thought that anything is unnecessary is a tough one to actually wrap your mind around. If something doesn't have a purpose in your story, if it doesn't add to the plot, and if it doesn't move your story further along, cut it. Some darlings may be reworked into the story, so if there's something that you really don't have the heart to cut, but it doesn't fit at that part of the book, maybe make a note of it and add it in somewhere else at a later stage. Number 6, small changes. Now is the time where you will make small changes. So all those little things that irritated you throughout your rereads. These could be character names that were hard to pronounce, or unrealistic parts in the book. That shocking yellow card that was so unbelievable. Maybe change the color. And also make sure that all of your quotation marks in dialogue are consistent. Make a choice, single or double, stick with it. Change them all. at this part of the editing process. Number 7, dun dun dun, character arcs. It's always a good idea to have your character arcs sketched out before you start writing your novel, but if you're anything like me, your characters will change throughout the writing process. So now's a good time to go back and re-look at your character. Number 8. Number 8. Create character sketches. This is another thing that I do before I actually start writing the book. But, as I've mentioned, my characters develop so much through the writing process that I always have to go back to my character sketches and add or take away certain elements of a character. And after writing a first draft of my novel, I know my characters so much better. So I often have so much more to say about a character. As part of my book, Write a Novel in 30 Days, I actually offer free character sketches, character questionnaires, and just great advice in getting to know your character. I also like to add photos of my character, diary entries, pictures of their bags and the contents of their bags, anything that will really personalize the character in my mind. Number 9. Work on your character's goals and motivations. Wow, by now I'm sure you've made a lot of changes in your novel. So, do all of your character's original goals and motivations still remain true? Have your changes affected them in any way? You might have to actually give your characters new goals and motivations at this point of the editing process. And then number 10, the hook. The hook. Yay! You're almost there. I want you to go back and reread your first few pages. Is your hook clear? Is there too much information or is there too little information for your readers? Sometimes as the writer of a story, we already know the backstory. So everything is clear to us, but would it be to someone reading your book from an outsider's perspective? Think about this when you are looking for your hook. So this step can be a really quick and simple, easy, pain-free step, or it can take you a while to figure this one out and really make your hook clear. Go pick up some of your favorite books in the same genre that you're writing in. Read the first few pages of all of them and identify their hooks. See how they reveal the hooks to the readers as well. A hook should be on the first page, and if possible, even in the first chapter of your novel. If you can have the hook in your first sentence, that's even better. Now, I know this is all a lot to take in, and I know that it's a lot of work, but you've come this far. You have put in all this work on your first draft that you owe it to yourself to make your manuscript the best that it can be. So take the time, follow these 10 steps, and really focus on each step individually. Another great tip, the way that I keep my focus on each tip at a time is that when I'm doing the read through, I use different colored highlighters for certain aspects that I would be looking at. So I will use a specific color for small changes, a color for darlings that I might need to rework or take out. I'll use a color for pacing and for characters, as well as a color for any plot holes. This way, when I'm looking for those aspects throughout my novel, they are easy to find when I go back. And most importantly, be kind to yourself. You might absolutely hate your story, but through the revision process, you can change and sculpt your story into something better and something more enjoyable. So allow yourself the opportunity to do this and don't give up on your story. I hope that this helps you guys revise your first drafts and start the self-editing process. I know that it can be so daunting, but you really owe it to yourselves to give your book the best that you can. Give it everything of yourself. You guys are so awesome. I'm Meg, by the way, and I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe and like.